Life is stranger than fiction. That has never been more true than it is today. Going back to the days of the first social media platform, MySpace, people pretended to be something more than they were. People pretended to be professional photographers, is what they listed themselves as. Others said that they were scholars, worldly scholars. Some said that they were professors at universities. But now on the internet, in this day and age of those who are interested more in crime and, fall into that category of an enthusiast, someone who enjoys true crime, there are people out there who make themselves out to be something that they're not. They tout experience and success where they have had absolutely none. Today, as you can see from the title of this video, I'm talking about the murder of the 4 college students out of the University of Idaho, Moscow campus. And someone who has interjected themselves into the investigation, into the story, if you will, of what happened to these 4 college students. This individual has, made a series of social media posts, blog posts, and yes, TikTok videos in the true crime field. Now, you must forgive me. I did not know that there was such a thing as true crime content on TikTok, because the only time I ever see TikTok is dares or challenges or dance-offs. That's all I ever see from TikTok. Maybe I should scroll around a little bit more on the platform, because I didn't know there was such a thing as true crime on TikTok. So this individual made a series of videos on TikTok and said that she had solved the murders of the 4 college students from the University of Idaho, Moscow campus, that she knew exactly who did it, why they did it, and she knew other important information about it. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, getting back to my earlier point, she calls herself an internet sleuth, and she calls herself a web detective. This is what she touts herself on, not only on social media and on her blog, but on LinkedIn as well. She calls herself an internet sleuth or an internet detective. And she's none of those. She also claims that she's helped solve several high-profile murder cases and high-profile crimes. She hasn't. She has never been a member of law enforcement. She holds no degree in criminology. She has no degree in forensics. She doesn't even have a degree from a community college. And before you jump in and say, hey, community college degrees are real degrees, all the same. And they are. But she doesn't even have that. Ashley Gillard is her name that she goes by on the internet. She has made a series of videos, like I said before, on TikTok, posts on her blog, along with a series of social media posts saying that she knows who killed these 4 college students. She named a college professor from the University of Idaho, Moscow campus, as the actual murderer. After she made a series of 3 videos, this college professor reached out through her attorney and had her served with not 1, but 2 cease and desist orders. These are legal binding orders to say, hey, hold the heck up. Stop what you're doing. You're defaming me, or whatever the reason is. But you, not 1, but 2. It didn't stop Ashley Gillard. She's made several videos, and, well, this University of Idaho Moscow campus professor who teaches history and who also sits on the board and chair of the history department has been a professor there since 2016, but is newly elected to the chair, the board of the history department. She then said, "I have no other choice. I have to do the next thing to stop this lady from defaming me on the internet." She went out and filed a lawsuit to stop Ashley Gillard, to recoup some of the damages that have been done to her good name. Again, let's not forget, Ashley Gillard says that she is a web detective, an internet detective, a web sleuth. I want to make sure everyone understands right now. There is actually a website called Web Sleuths, and I am a member of Web Sleuths. Ashley Gillard has never been on Web Sleuths. She has no verified account. She doesn't even have an account there. You might be wondering, why would she name this professor as the actual perpetrator of these crimes? We don't know. Especially in light of the fact that after the first cease and desist order that was served on her, the professor, Rebecca Schofield, messaged her through her attorney and said, "I wasn't even in the state of Idaho when these murders took place. Please stop defaming my good name." She didn't stop, like I had said. She kept on defaming her and ramping up and enriching herself off of what she was doing. She collected all kinds of actual cash donations and people to help her. And people asked her then, as the exposure rose from what she was doing, for private readings, where she charged money to do private readings for people. She enriched herself, seeking that 15 minutes of fame. Like so many other people on the internet these days, it doesn't matter how much you lie, stab people in the back, as long as you can convince enough people that you know what you're talking about. That's the game that people are playing these days on the internet. And they are playing you all for a fool. You might be wondering, where was Professor Schofield at the time? Her husband, family members, and family friends were all in Portland, Oregon at the time that the murder occurred, and they didn't even check out of their motel until 3 hours after the discovery of the 4 college students. Now, how far away is Portland, Oregon from Moscow, Idaho? During the summer months, and I've driven this road, this direction, quite a few times. During the summer months, you can travel it in maybe 5.5 hours. But from October, November, and December, and January of every year, there's no way you're going to drive that route, the only direct route there, at any speed near the speed limit. You're going to crawl along a certain portion of it as you leave the 2-lane highway and merge onto another 2-lane highway. It's treacherous. Black ice is common everywhere in this area. It takes in the wintertime and adverse conditions, like right now when the college students were actually murdered, it'll take anywhere from close to 7 hours drive to get from Portland to Moscow, Idaho. She didn't even have to release what her actual alibi is. She didn't have to say where she was or who she was with, but she did anyways, to prove, again, she was nowhere near the actual events. Why did Ashley Gillard say this professor did it? She said that the professor, Rebecca Schofield, was sexually involved with one of the 4 college students, but never naming a name, leaving it open for speculation and for people to want to watch more. Was it one of the girls? Was it the lone male who was murdered? She doesn't say, but she speculates and drops hints in future videos that it's not who you may think it is. According to actual records from the University of Idaho Moscow campus, none of the 4 murdered college students ever took a class from Rebecca Schofield. And it's almost highly unlikely that Rebecca Schofield would have ever even run into or met them outside of the school. Her and her husband live in a rural area, an unincorporated area outside of the city of Moscow. The college students lived in town. They spent most of their time within a 3-mile area of the actual campus, the complete opposite direction from where this professor lived. This professor also didn't hang out on Greek Row or party at frat houses or sorority houses like these 4 college students did, being normal college students. They did nothing wrong. Being murdered and whatever they may have done in the past doesn't, condone what, has happened to them. But at the same time, making up vicious lies and spreading them on the internet about someone just because you want to chase that 15 minutes of fame isn't right either. After being served not 1 but 2 cease and desist orders and then laughing about them, then making a video when the lawsuit was filed against her, she just doesn't care. She thinks there's no reason for her to care because, again, she's got all of this out here on the internet. She hides behind a keyboard. She feels invincible. But I hate to break the bad news to her. The state of Idaho and the state of Texas, where Ashley Gillard actually resides, have long since settled and supported the rights of an individual who has been defamed. And that is exactly what she did. She defamed her and she enriched herself off of the lies that were told. Now, I know there are people out there on the internet who are going to say she has the constitutional right to say whatever she wants. Don't you dare tell her that she doesn't have those rights and that we all have those rights. You do. We all have those rights, but there are restrictions involved with freedom of speech. You can't walk into a movie theater and yell fire. You cannot go on the internet or onto the evening news and defame someone on purpose and then enrich yourself off of those lies. Yeah, we have the right of freedom of speech. But if you read the actual, Constitution and the amendments, the freedom of speech only protects us from the government stopping us. By her posting those videos online and her blog on top of it all, she goes into much more detail on there. You can't do that. No one can do that. Not mainstream media. No one. And now, you, at this point in the video, if you've watched this far, you are probably wondering, what harm did it really cause? The harm that it caused was the abundance of bogus tips that were called into the Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Patrol, and other local law enforcement agencies in and around the Moscow area, clogging up the actual tip line. And every tip must be followed up, filed, and reported on. Yes, I read this tip. White rabbit having tea with a playing card in the forest. Okay, I read it. I don't think it needs to be followed up on. So file that away. Next tip: white rabbit, girl in white dress, having tea in force. Okay. With professor. Oh, a professor. That's different. That's new. Well, we better see who this professor is. Oh, okay. This is Rebecca Schofield. Every single ridiculous tip must be looked at, filed away, and goes into the file. If they don't follow up on the tips that are called in, it gives the eventual perpetrator down the road an avenue to appeal or to convince a jury that they didn't do it because they didn't look at these tips. This is the actual harm of what happened here. Not just a defamation of this actual person, this professor at the University of Idaho, but what it has done to the investigation itself. Because right now, we already know the family is screaming mad. They think that the police have dragged their feet and made multiple errors along the way. Now, how would you like to talk to the family and say, I'm sorry, but everything is going to be a little bit slower because now we need to look into these hundreds of thousands of other tips, or however many have been called in. We know it's quite a few because an officer with the Moscow Police Department said that he spoke off the record, by the way, who said there have been a lot of tips called in after this lady released these videos online and posted on her blog that she was a web detective and that she was an internet sleuth, and she knew that this was the person who killed these 4 college students. They had a lot of tips. You can draw the conclusion of how many is a lot. It's more than a few. And it's tips that they have to actually pay attention to and they have to look at. That's the harm. We all have the right to say whatever we want, and the government can't stop us from saying it if you're an American citizen. These are our alienable rights. But you can't just say whatever you want and not care about the repercussions of what you say. There are repercussions of what she did. Yes, Rebecca Schofield has filed a lawsuit seeking $75,000 in damages. But I don't think $75,000 is going to repair her reputation and put her back in good standing without people always questioning, why was she involved in this? Did the police ever question her? If they don't catch the perpetrator soon, in this case, she's going to be the first thing that comes up on internet searches. And trust me, just before doing this video, I typed in to Google internet in the search box, Idaho students murdered. The very first article that came up was a newspaper out of Bend, Oregon, who is reporting on Rebecca Schofield and the theory that this individual has that she was the one who killed the 4 college students. Again, she wasn't in town, she wasn't in the state, and she has multiple people who are her alibis. It's not like it's in the same town. 6-hour drive away. Be careful what you wish for when you're out there, wishing that cases like this get solved. They take time. And please, by all means, double check what people are telling you is the truth. Believing the first thing that you hear as the truth only does an injustice to you, but it does an injustice to everybody else that's following the case. And it does an injustice to the victims. The more you know, the better off you will be.